If you recently lost your job and your health coverage due to the COVID-19 pandemic and you think you may be eligible for Medicare, you probably have more questions than answers right now. Statewide Insurers Group, All Things Medicare, can help you with that. We can provide the guidance and the answers that you need to get the benefits you may be eligible for. Don't let this time of uncertainty jeopardize your eligibility for your Medicare benefits. Remember, relationships matter. Call Statewide Insurers Group today for the answers that you need now. 316-8166.
Being prepared and trained is the best way to keep your family safe. The best way to be prepared is to learn from those who've spent a lifetime protecting us. Barnes Safety and Consulting LLC offers concealed carry classes with instructors who are law enforcement officers active and retired with more than 100 years of law enforcement experience. Monthly classes are taught year-round with private classes and special group rates available. Classes are $75 and held in the Bailey area. Call or text 1-800-653-0643. Get your concealed carry permit and avoid becoming a victim.
And welcome to the K-Files. And we have Lieutenant Jeff Sherrod this morning.
Glad to be here.
So glad you're here. And we have Mr. Lindell with us this morning. Again, my sidekick, or maybe I'm his sidekick. I haven't figured out which. But anyway, I want to thank our sponsor, Statewide Insurance Group. And who's our other sponsor?
Barnes.
JP. Wow. JP Barnes Safety and Consulting. Don't forget to get your concealed carry. That's very important. So
I think you were just testing me, son.
Call JP.
We have Lieutenant Sherrod. The reason you're up front is that we've decided that whenever we have law enforcement on, we're going to put them up right away, because I know y'all got busy days, y'all got things to do, but mainly it's so that we can get to the point and let you talk about the case that you want to talk about, and then I can come back later and do all my time filling jibber jabber. But we want to waste your time with that. So you said that you were going to be on today, and I'm going to let you tell the people what you want them to know.
Today we're going to talk about Lakisha Mcnair. She was 21 at the time she went missing. She went missing from 1413 Hill Street in Rocky Mount back on January 17, 2001. Rocky Mount took a missing person report case, worked it, and then in July the 27th of 2001, some people were visiting a cemetery off of Browntown Road outside of Rocky Mount, Red Oak, and noticed a human skull on a grave. Law enforcement was called. We got there, and through dental records, a couple of weeks later, we were able to determine that skull belonged to Miss McNair. At that time, the Nash County Sheriff's Office took over the case as a homicide. Rocky Mount PD worked with us in a joint investigation for a while, worked several leads, interviewed tons of people, and then the family goes through the transition and of realizing now she's not a missing person, she's deceased, and they deal with that. And then unfortunately for this family, in April the 20th, 2008. 7 years later, a group of guys were riding four-wheelers in a wooded area and come across what they believed to be human remains. The sheriff's office responded again, and when we got there again, the medical examiner was able to determine that those human remains belonged to Miss McNair.
Wow.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Are you got more? Are you?
No, go ahead. We got
Okay, so how far was these woods we're talking about from the graveyard?
less than a mile.
But her skull was found on a grave in the graveyard.
It was, from what I've read, it was a freshly grave still that had just happened at the grave site. Still had the funeral home tent above it, and the skull was just laying on the top of it under freshly, smooth dirt. And some people were there. A tombstone for another grave had came in, and some family members saw it, called the sheriff's office, and then that's when we responded.
So here's a speculative question for me. So if the body's in the woods a mile away and not found for 7 years,
7 years later.
the skull was found, this poor girl's skull was found on a gravestone in a somewhat public area. I'm assuming that, and how long was it between her
6 months.
missing and the skull found?
6 months.
I'm assuming somebody put it there.
That's a safe assumption.
Okay. That's all I got.
So where was this located?
I'm very rarely
I mean, is
speechless,
it-
Lieutenant, but I mean,
So-
that is something.
There is a cemetery off of Browntown Road. If you go down off of Tape 43 off of
Yes.
Browntown, there's a cemetery down there.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
It's like a private cemetery.
Okay.
But Miss McNair, she was 21 at the time. I guess also what's sad about this case is that what I've read, Miss McNair was a very happy a grown up. She was mentally challenged.
Okay.
But everybody says that she was always happy, never had like where she won't smiling or outside playing or whatever. I mean, and in that picture we saw, the family says that she was between the ages of 17 and 19 years old when that picture was taken. And I mean, look at her. I mean, she's smiling in the picture, and that's what everybody says that they remember about her from the interviews that I've read in the file.
Wow.
I don't want to get too deep into your investigation because it is an investigation.
Right.
But I mean, obviously, a key component of this investigation would have to be why the skull was, I assume, moved from where it originally was with the body to that point. I know that y'all have investigated that thoroughly. I mean, it's a very unusual. I've been doing this almost 22 years. And it's the first time I've ever heard of this. First time I've ever heard of this in my 22 years. That I mean, it's morbid. It's grisly.
I mean, I agree with what you said earlier. I think it's a safer assumption to say that somebody took the skull and placed it there for it to be found. They, like I said earlier, they interviewed tons of people back then with the help of Rocky Mount PD. We interviewed a lot of people, and as of yet, we hadn't been able to solve it. Probably about a couple months ago, the family called the sheriff's office and asked them if we would reopen this case. So, of course, we did, and we're going to throw everything at it again like we usually do.
Well, y'all do a good job. Y'all have a very good clearance rate. So
Yes, they do.
We got some that we need to get solved, but I mean, we try. I mean, like I said earlier, we throw everything at a homicide when it happens. We drop everything, and everybody goes, and everybody does their part, and sometimes we get lucky, and sometimes we don't.
yes, sir.
Well, I certainly hope you get lucky because, bless her heart, a mentally challenged person at that, nobody needs to be treated this way.
I agree.
But to treat a mentally challenged person this way is just beyond anything.
I used to know a deputy that everybody called him Horseshoe because they said he was lucky all the time.
That's your story.
Yeah, but this guy would like the one time there was a guy that was robbing a whole bunch of banks in the area, and they had a description of a red beat up pickup truck. That's all they had on this guy. And this deputy went to every seedy rundown motel. I'm talking about the Jacksonville area. Every seedy rundown motel, and drove around the back of them till I think on like the 15th one he found that red pickup truck, and they made the arrest. And then everybody said how lucky he is. Well, I mean, he went to 15 hotels looking for the guy, you know. So sometimes luck has a lot of
Sounds like good police work.
perseverance. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But I mean, to agree with what Sandra says, you know, it's a sad case and it's a tough case. But you know, normally in society, people that are mentally challenged don't bother anybody.
No, that's exactly right, as a rule.
And to have this done to her, and then the family have to live through it twice. I mean, they lived through it in 2001 when the skull was found. Then they have to live through it again in 2008 when the rest of her remains are found. It would be nice and satisfactory to be able to get them some more closure. When I contacted you and told you what we were going to be talking about on the air, we also let Kat with Fighting Crime get it. And she posted it, and so we know people know about it because within 30 minutes of Kat posting it on Fighting Crime, she got some tips in.
Wow.
We know, even though it's been since 2001, 2008, people still are familiar with this case. So if you have some information, please contact Fighting Crime.
Absolutely.
There's the number right there. We share that number with her.
736.
Or just call the sheriff's office and ask for me, and we follow up on every tip. Every tip definitely gets investigated by the sheriff's office. We don't just take your tip and don't do anything with it. So it would be great to give the McNair family some closure and hopefully some tips to come in on the weekend.
Well, let's just recap a little bit for people that are listening that might, know something. Latesha McNair.
Lakisha Mcnair, she went missing from 1413 Hill Street in Rocky Mount on January 17, 2001. Her skull was found in a private cemetery off of Browntown Road outside of Red Oak and Rocky Mount back in July 27, 2001. And then almost 7 years later, the rest of her remains were discovered by a group of guys just riding four-wheelers in the woods.
Do you know how many bodies have been found by guys riding four-wheelers? Thank goodness.
Four-wheelers,
they're
hunters,
out there.
Four-wheelers, hunters, and surveyors.
I agree.
They find all the bodies.
Yay to the hunters, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we hope if you know anything about this case, remember we will pay out, and we pay out fast. We really do, and it is not upon conviction. It is upon arrest. So please, if you know anything, call Lieutenant Sherrod or call the number on the bottom of the screen, and of course, it will be anonymous, of course. So anyway.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Yes,
Anything else?
Amen.
All right. We'll be right back
back.
with you. Thank you for coming.
If you recently lost your job and your health coverage due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and you think you may be eligible for Medicare, you probably have more questions than answers right now. Statewide Insurers Group, All Things Medicare, can help you with that. We can provide the guidance and the answers that you need to get the benefits you may be eligible for. Don't let this time of uncertainty jeopardize your eligibility for your Medicare benefits. Remember, relationships matter. Call Statewide Insurers Group today for the answers that you need now. 316-8166.
Being prepared and trained is the best way to keep your family safe. The best way to be prepared is to learn from those who've spent a lifetime protecting us. Barnes Safety and Consulting LLC offers concealed carry classes with instructors who are law enforcement officers active and retired with more than 100 years of law enforcement experience. Monthly classes are taught year-round with private classes and special group rates available. Classes are $75 and held in the Bailey area. Call or text 1-800-653-0643. Get your concealed carry permit and avoid becoming a victim.
Okay, and we'll be talking about Latesha McNair more as time goes on in the next week or so. We'll get more in detail
Absolutely.
with it. So look forward to that.
And that's actually what we're doing today, is getting into more detail with something we talked about previously.
That's
Last
right.
week we gave some updates on half a dozen cases that we've been talking about a lot. And here's Cheryl Watson. In 1991, she was a 25-year-old college student. She worked at a textile mill in Rocky Mount. Remember back when Rocky Mount had textile mills?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, she lived with her mother on Marigold Street. This is Bill Stash Lawton. I don't know whether they called him that because he had a mustache or whether he held marijuana a lot. I don't know why they called him Stash, but in the late 80s and early 90s, he was busy raping women all over Rocky Mount. We're going to get into that. This is Cheryl's Nissan right here. Here's a crime scene photo of inside the car that Lieutenant Seifman gave us when he talked about the case, okay? It was found abandoned April 11th, 1991 in the parking lot shared by a ballpark and the cemetery on Raleigh Road. And so here's Pine View Cemetery. This is another crime scene photo, right? This graveyard map that I got from the people that work there, crazy enough, they worked there back in 1991 and they still work there when I went there a couple years ago. You can see, leave that up for a second, Brittany, because I want to make sure. It's kind of hard to see, but about in the middle of the screen there, you'll see number 30. It's got like an X mark on it, and it's right diagonal from where the old office used to be. So she's about in the middle of the graveyard. Either way you go,
Wow.
her body's found in the middle of the graveyard. So a cemetery worker comes to work, and they find her body there, and that led to the car that we showed, right? But her head had been smashed into a tombstone, and her pants had been removed. And those pants have never been found. To this day, we don't know her wallet and her pants. We don't know where they are today, right? And that was a long time ago. So she was not raped, but detectives think that she wasn't raped because she put up too much of a fight, or something scared her attacker away.
Well, I don't
you
know
know.
how she put up a good enough fight, because that guy was big.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was a big guy.
He was. Okay, you're right. Maybe somebody just happened to
Somebody
drive
could
through
have
there.
drove up, anything.
Yeah, but I mean, they're pretty sure the motive in the attack was rape, but then it progressed.
Well, I'm sure so.
It progressed to her being dead, right?
Habitually did.
Exactly. So here's Mr. Lawton's criminal history right here. I want folks to see. Well, it's a little blurry, but down in the corner, he died in March, and the prison people just put it up. So it says the last line in that says last movement death, which nobody's really mourning for Mr. Lawton. Here's the next page, his criminal record, the rape counts. You can see the bottom line, rape. So he committed a lot of rapes.
That's awful.
And then here's some breaking and entering on the next page, through those. And then the next page is full of assaults. This is all public record. People can go look this up. Assault on a female, assault with a deadly weapon, right? And then on the last page, what else is that bottom one says escape prison, right? So he escaped at one point back in 1983. He escaped from prison.
I'm sorry, but I am not mourning your loss.
So here's Geraldine Watson. That's Cheryl's mom. It's a picture that ran in the Telegram when I worked for them. There's a picture of her holding her daughter. I interviewed Miss Geraldine a couple of times back in 2007 when I first wrote about this case, right? And she's the one that first told me that Lawton was the only suspect in Cheryl's death, really, the main suspect. And I confirmed that through law enforcement. And all these years, she's not only mourned her daughter, but she's also been afraid that Mr. Lawton would get out of prison because he already escaped once.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not
really.
easy to escape from prison, you know. So she was just been living in fear all these years.
He was just a horrible guy.
Yeah, he was not a nice person at all. So after the show last week where I said that he had died, I went over to Miss Lawton's. I'm sorry, Miss Watson's house, and let her know that he was dead, and she was relieved. She was
She didn't know it.
No, she didn't know it, but she was crying. I think she was relieved for a little bit of justice finally for her daughter, but I think she was also just like relieved that her fear, some people might say it is irrational fear that he could get out and do something, but I mean, then again, those people haven't lost their daughter to violent death, and the guy,
that's right.
and the guy had been known to escape from prison.
It's a real possibility.
Right. So, I learned a little bit more. I thought I knew most of the case, but last week when I was putting together a story about all of this, I learned something I didn't know, and that is for all of those rapes that Mr. Lawton committed from about 1988 to about 1991 or so, at least 5 or 6 of them. They were all solved through DNA. And it was there's my little stock photo of DNA. It's the first successful prosecution of a case in Nash County using DNA.
Really?
Yeah.
So his was?
Yes, it was actually Nash and Edgecombe because he committed rapes in both, Rocky Mountain, both places. So they convicted him in both Nash and in Edgecombe on all those rapes, and they used DNA to do it. It was the first time that it had ever been done in Nash County. So he's now died in prison. And I wrote this article, was in the paper this week about it. It's always good when you can get headlines like that. Nash rapist dies in prison. And I wanted to slow down for just a minute and explain all that to people.
Right.
Because I think hopefully the next time that I write about this case will be that it's been closed.
Yes.
As resolved. I mean, there was no arrest made in the case, but I mean, law enforcement can close cases based on the death of the suspect.
Well, why not close it because he's dead?
Well, I mean, they had good probable cause at the time, and I mean, they still have all that evidence. So
Yeah.
I mean, I would close it out.
Yeah.
So we'll be right back with Unidentified, and we've got an extremely interesting case. I've been working on this case for my entire career.
Oh, really? What?
Yeah. We'll talk about it when we get back.
If you recently lost your job and your health coverage due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and you think you may be eligible for Medicare, you probably have more questions than answers right now. Statewide Insurers Group, All Things Medicare, can help you with that. We can provide the guidance and the answers that you need to get the benefits you may be eligible for. Don't let this time of uncertainty jeopardize your eligibility for your Medicare benefits. Remember, relationships matter. Call Statewide Insurers Group today for the answers that you need now. 316-8166.
Being prepared and trained is the best way to keep your family safe. The best way to be prepared is to learn from those who've spent a lifetime protecting us. Barnes Safety and Consulting LLC offers concealed carry classes with instructors who are law enforcement officers active and retired with more than 100 years of law enforcement experience. Monthly classes are taught year-round with private classes and special group rates available. Classes are $75 and held in the Bailey area. Call or text 1-800-653-0643. Get your concealed carry permit and avoid becoming a victim.